This is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson on AM 560. The Answer.
Good morning, Dan and Amy. I have another movie recommendation for you. I recommended the documentary One Child Nation earlier in the show. There's another movie that's out called Miss Virginia, and it's about the heroine, really, of the Opportunity Scholarship Program that was installed in Washington, D.C. about 15 years ago, bringing school choice to D.C. to mostly minority kids, mostly black kids, who were otherwise relegated to schools that were failing them, just as they had failed generations before them. The same story we have in Chicago, and that was the backdrop of us here in Illinois getting the tax credit scholarship program passed under the previous gubernatorial administration with an interesting coalition of support, including from minority legislators, including from Democrats here. Tax credit scholarships that last year provided upwards of 7,000 scholarships to kids across Illinois, mostly minority kids, but not exclusively, and will provide many more as more money is raised to fund these scholarships for kids and families that want better options for the education of their children. This movie, Miss Virginia, though, is really interesting because the tax credit scholarship piece came from coalition building by political operatives with some politician support, some financier support, because school choice had been established thanks to the work of people like Polly Williams in Milwaukee 25 years ago, and thanks to people like Virginia Walden Ford in D.C., who provided to some extent the model, but also the belief that it could actually happen even in areas that are controlled by teachers' unions and disinclined to be supportive of school choice and the weakening of their grip on public school systems. Miss Virginia is a movie you have to see. And we're honored to have Virginia Walden Ford, who is the basis of the movie. She is Miss Virginia, founder and former executive director of DC Parents for School Choice, founder of the Black Alliance for Educational Options, author of School Choice, A Legacy to Keep. And again, Miss Virginia is available now on iTunes and Amazon. Download it and see it and share it with your friends and kids. Virginia Walden Ford, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
If we could just do the backstory on the DC Opportunity Scholarship Program, and your activism. As I mentioned, you were not a political activist. You weren't in the political realm. You were a single mom trying to get your son into a better school, and that was sort of thrust upon you. And I just because this is a triumph sort of one individual's leadership, bringing a bunch of individuals together. I just want people to understand your story.
Well, I had a 14-year-old, almost 15-year-old son who was really having a difficult time in school. And teachers gave up on him. Everybody gave up on him. And I knew that with a better opportunity, a better environment, a school that worked for him, he would be successful. And so I started speaking out at board meetings and other places. But what I found was that, people really weren't interested in hearing what I had to say. And eventually, somebody offered us a private scholarship for him to go to a school, and I saw how much it changed his life. I mean, it was amazing to see him go from a kid that didn't want to go to school and who would leave school when I drop him off to a child that was really interested in learning and all those kinds of, successes that kids often have when they're in better environments. Well, I watched him, and I watched him do well, but all around my community, there were other children that weren't doing well. And I believed that somebody had to speak out on behalf of those families, and that's kind of how I got into it. I started speaking out with groups of parents and talking about what we needed for our kids and how our kids' needs were not being met at DC public schools. And a member of Congress heard me, and it just spiraled. I found myself speaking lots of places reluctantly, and but for the kids, and as shy as I was, or as not equipped to do this, when it came time to speak out for the kids, the words came.
Oh, with respect to your son, just to go back to him for a second, because in the movie he's portrayed as having this sort of inert artistic talent that when a bit underdeveloped in the public school, but then he, as you said, he started enjoying school again, and that artistic talent flourished. Is that accurate? Is that one of the aptitudes your son has?
Absolutely. I mean, this was a child that did a mural on his bedroom wall, so he was really excited about art. But he also learned that he was excited not just about art, but about learning, and that was the thing that was awesome to me. This was a kid that, he would draw, and he was a really good artist, but what else did we see, or what else did others see? And what we saw was a child that was really bright and capable and could do more than just draw. And even though he was very successful in art. But, it's the kinds of things that we never notice about our children, or schools never notice about our children. What are their abilities, and how can we, make those abilities be something that's successful for them?
And how's your son doing today?
Oh, he's an amazing man. He just bought his first house. He's 36, and he is just an incredible man. But the kids that were around him didn't make it, so it's even more exciting to watch him be doing so well in life. And but it's sad thinking about the children that didn't make it, because it took years to fight for the scholarship program to be implemented, or to be passed and implemented. And so, by the time we did get it going in 2004, we was an adult. So the kids around him that didn't benefit from the scholarship program, it left sad stories.
That one of the scenes in the movie, Miss Virginia, where you're speaking. I think it's either at a school board meeting or it's at a town hall, including the congressman that you're working for at the time, at least in the movie. And it's just this idea of not being patient, and I mean in a good way. And we hear this all the time in Chicago and elsewhere too. Is hey, we're working on it. We're working on it. Well, you know what? Basically, you said in the movie, your character says, hey, my kid is 14, 15, 16 years old once. You don't get to come back to him 20 years from now and say, hey, we figured it out. So if you can't figure it out now, then I want to go take my son somewhere that where they have figured it out. And that's a pretty simple argument.
Absolutely, and that was the argument I was hearing from parents. The schools were saying, oh, be patient. It'll come. We're working on it. We're going to fix it. But our kids needed it right then. They couldn't wait 3 more years. And as it was, by the time William finished high school, the program was just beginning to get enacted. So it was a long time of worrying about him and trying to make sure that he was in the right educational environments. But parents told me constantly they felt hopeless and helpless, and nobody was doing anything right now, and they were losing their kids.
And how many, when it's all said and done, how many opportunity scholarships have helped how many students to date?
In the 15 years that this program has been going on, there's been over 10,000 children that have benefited from the scholarship program. So, which is an amazing number to me. I mean, when we started doing this fight, we were fighting for about 100 kids, because that's how many parents were involved, and we were fighting for our children. Never would we thought that it would have done so well, and we hoped it would. We knew that putting kids in educational environments that worked for them, it was part of the answer. But to celebrate over 10,000 children having being a part of this program was wonderful. That's the reward an activist gets for fighting.
And former mayor of D.C., Anthony Williams, who's a supporter of the program, he made the point just a couple of years ago, I think last data that's available, the scholarship participating schools in D.C. had a graduation rate of 98% compared to 69% for the D.C. public schools. So that's pretty substantial difference, at least according to that metric.
Oh, it is. I mean, it was amazing to get those first that research, seeing exactly how our kids were doing, and it was an incredible blessing because these children that were the early participants of the scholarship program and current participants were from communities where kids just didn't graduate. I think at the time we were fighting, the dropout rate was somewhere around 47%, and they were accustomed to going a certain way in school and then dropping out, because they didn't feel like anybody cared about them anyway. So, and I hear this from the students, they didn't care, so why continue?
Yeah.
I want in the movie. There's a congressman played by Matthew Modine named Cliff Williams. Now, this is a fictional character, but he is a proponent in the movie of school choice, even though he doesn't think you have a snowball's chance in hell of getting school choice in D.C. I wonder I wonder if was there a particular public official, politician, or group of politicians that really made the difference, both at the beginning and then culminating with the passage and signature by President Bush into law?
Absolutely. There were a number of amazing members of Congress in the House and in the Senate that supported us and that stood for us, and he's kind of a combination of all of those people. Right. Occasionally, when I'm watching a movie, I can see one person or I can see the other person in his performance. So it's kind of cool to watch. But there were many members of Congress that rallied around us and believed what we had to say. It was absolutely incredible.
I mean, I got to ask this because I think this comes through, and it comes through in a nice way in the movie. It's subtle. It doesn't beat you over the head. But the issue of race, the composite congressman is white, and he's a school choice proponent because he believes it'll help, but he also is sort of fatalistic because he doesn't think that you can get minority congressmen to support it, minority families to support it. It's a sort of an abstraction for him, even though it's very real to you and other families. And I noted Polly Williams, who is a black alderman in Milwaukee back 25 years ago, was key to moving school choice in Milwaukee. And obviously you were key to doing it in D.C., black families in Cleveland and other communities. Is it something where in urban centers you have to have black and Latino families lead and then white suburban or exurban politicians follow? Is that the model?
Yeah, well, I think during 15 years ago that we were thinking those are the kids that are hurt the most, in affluent communities and which are often white communities. Parents can move to schools, they can pay for private schools, but in low-income communities, which are often predominantly, in urban centers at least, often predominantly black or Latino, our families couldn't do that. So I think the initial thought was that we have to serve the neediest, the children that need us most. But I think as time has gone by, I'm in Arkansas, and 70% of kids that need help in Arkansas are white, or rural kids.
Yeah.
So I think over time we've come to realize that we need to fight for all of America's children, not just black kids, not just Latino kids, but all kids. And actually, in our fight, we had all kids. We had poor white kids, we had poor black kids, we had Asian kids who were living in public housing. Our position, even at that time, was even though we're African American mothers primarily who were in the initial fight, we fight for every child, and I think it's gotten even more, people are expressing it even more, that we have to fight for America's kids, and America's kids are not just black and Latino, they're all kids.
It's about resources, not race.
Right. It is, Absolutely. And, you know, when parents can't afford to send their kids, no matter what color they are, they still have the same desires. I've traveled the country talking to parents. I've been really blessed to be able to do that. And when I go to Iowa, I close my eyes and I listen to parents. I don't know what race they are. I
Mm.
mean, you know, they're every parent, you know. And so that's the thing that I think that we've learned over years, that we have to fight for every child. But the early programs were means tested. They were primarily directed to African American kids for the most part, and Latino kids in communities that were not being served well.
She is Virginia Walden Ford, Miss Virginia, as she will be forever known, thanks to this movie in part. Founder and former executive director of DC Parents for School Choice, founder of Black Alliance for Educational Options, author of School Choice: A Legacy to Keep, which is available on November 21st. So pre-order that on Amazon, and the film, which you can also download on Amazon, iTunes, and you should. Miss Virginia, Miss Virginia Walden Ford. Thank you so much for joining us. Good luck with the book and the film.
Thank you so much for having me, and I'm hoping we'll be there sometime in the near future in Chicago.
Great.
Oh, yeah,
Love
let
to
us
have
know.
you.
Yep.
Boy, we could use you here. No question about it.
Well,
Thank.
I'll be happy to come.
All right.
All right.
Thank you.